pretty good little restaurant.
Yeah, that's probably the best Mexican restaurant in Apopka. It's not the best. I just turned this on. I think it's working.
Sheila? No.
I
Hi, Sheila.
does chickens.
She's probably still taking her test.
No, I sent this. Done it all day. I sent it to her.
You did? You sent it to her? Well, she doesn't look at it because we were studying a little bit and talking to each other about the test and just going over stuff in the book and other things. And she never looks at the test until she takes it. That's what she says.
Take a test.
I believe her.
I don't care. Where did that come from? Lucy's deposits.
So you're going to homeschool Lucy. I think it's a great idea.
I don't know about that. Her father doesn't really want to do that, and he's probably not up for it. We've done homeschooling before. He grew up in homeschooling. I'm not too hep on it. He wants to put her in one of the schools. And there's some, well, we live right near, what's that one over there on Sadler Road, the big school over there. That's one Billy Graham sent his kids there to Saigon. So that's the mansion out there, but the school's out there, and that's a really good Christian school.
Whose was it? Billy Graham?
No, he sent his kids there.
Oh.
He sent his kids there. They got pictures on the wall of him and his kids out there. Yeah, but they're a really good Christian school. So when she gets old enough, that's probably her son is right up the street. I mean,
Sheila's children went to a Christian school.
Yeah, some are good. Not every Christian school is good, but
No.
you know they have their problems. Nowadays they all want to get into this certificate stuff and being certified, and they got all kinds of crazy stuff.
I kind of thank God I didn't have any children, you know. Well, my marriage, I was only married one time, but,
Yeah.
you know, I never had.
Can I ask a question? How long were you married?
Not long.
Not long.
He's probably two years from now.
Oh, okay.
He was extremely abusive.
Well,
That was back when I was 17, 18.
Yeah.
I got married really young.
You're really young, yeah.
And I got married to stay married forever, but it didn't turn out that way.
Didn't.
I'd be dead today.
You did, yeah.
He shot at me. I mean, I worked 2 jobs. He got turned into an alcoholic.
Oh, that'll do it.
And his
That
friends
means-
down the street got him on pills and stuff. And then I thought I would be married forever. And my mother was, you know, very Christian. And I
Yeah.
asked her, I said, Mom, I said, he beat me, he cheated on me, he shot at me, he did all these things, he's drinking, I can't, you know. She said, I think you have legal, you know, God can see you out
Oh,
of
yeah,
there.
sure.
And then she said, if I were you and all this was going on, I probably would get divorced. But I'm not going to tell you what to do. It's just to make your own decision.
Yeah.
I think I made the right one because.
Yeah, well, of course, because scripturally you had grounds.
And I
You did.
never remarried. So.
Well, I didn't know that's your thing.
Yeah, I just never remarried.
You know, right person hasn't come along.
There's always been a red flag, or there's always been something, you know, I did the wrong
Things
thing, they did the
or
wrong thing.
things.
Living in sin, I stopped doing that about 12, 15 years ago. So
Sure.
I can't even remember, but, you know, I'll do that
Yeah,
anymore.
everybody's gone
They all
through
want to
this
shack
stuff.
up.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not going to shack
And
up.
it doesn't mean just for non-believers. Christians do it too.
And they want to shack up in my house.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Well, that's the way it happens.
and then I end up paying your bills.
That's what they want. And that's why it says flee fornication. There's a and you know why? Because of the soul fragmentation.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to work through some of that.
Okay. Well, Father, we thank you tonight for this time to share in your word and teach us and lead us in all truth. I ask the Holy Spirit, Lord, to come forth and His here. I know you can begin this message on this study in Jesus Christ's name. Amen. Okay, we're going back to Semiramis.
Oh, I don't like her. Every time I hear that name now, I crush.
Well, you gotta know about her because that's where it all began.
Really.
Okay.
Sheila and I want to be her.
She's already in the hot place right now. She sold her soul a long time ago. Okay.
Oh.
Do you remember what Semiramis' real name was.
Something of the sea.
No, Samur Amet. If you look on the bottom of your
Oh, okay,
page.
Samur Amet.
Sure, and
Or Gift of the Sea.
gift of the
Partially,
sea.
right?
Yeah, that's right. That's what it means, gift of the sea. The initial element, Sumer, when translated in Hebrew, becomes Shinar. Shinar, the land of Shinar. And the biblical name for the lower Mesopotamia, and the word, and is the word which we derive Sumeria. Sumeria.
So she was a real person.
Oh yeah.
She lived in the sea, or she just was
No, no, that was just her
Gift of the sea?
name.
Okay.
That's what the name meant.
So she wasn't like a spirit. She was a
No, no, she was a real flesh and blood person.
person.
And of course, her made her living as a madam in a brothel. She actually owned or run her, what we call a nightclub today, but she ran a, brothel, booze, and all that stuff.
Wow.
And if you turn that page, there we go. Very little has come down to us through the millennium concerning Semiramis' rise to power, but it is safe to assume that it was initially upon Nimrod's coattails, as we know, that she wrote. Although later in life, as well as throughout history, her influence overwhelmingly obscured that of her husband. Oh yeah, she rises to power, and as you'll see, she gets rid of him. She's the one who killed him.
So she was married to Nimrod.
Yeah, she married Nimrod. Of course, it would not do to have an ex-harlot upon the throne, because he was a king. He was the king now. He conquered all the lower Mesopotamia, came up the river with his armada and took out the cities, all of them, and became king or ruler over the whole region. So he couldn't have a wife that was a harlot. That would have been politically a killer right there, on the throne. So the polite fiction was invented that she was a virgin, sprung from the sea at Nimrod's landing. When Nimrod landed, she popped out of the sea. She gifted, what was her? What does that name of hers mean? Gift of the sea. So that's what they used to pull off to pull the wool over everybody's eyes. Landing, and hence a suitable bride for the emperor. He would call himself emperor, by the way. Thus, the title Semiramis, which is totally obscured her original name, Sumet Amur. Yeah, Semiramis was the instigator in forming the false religion aimed at supporting their rule. And of course, her suggestion fell upon open ears. The religion she invented was based primarily upon the corruption of the primeval astronomy formulated by Noah's righteous ancestors before the flood. So here's what it was. Before the flood, the constellations and all those things up there, they actually told a story of the fall of Satan, of the rise of the Savior, and they would explain that way, Noah. And because Enoch and him, because Enoch had gone to heaven, he probably had brought back the information about all this stuff. So when they saw all those things, that's what they said they were, And there was no astrology or anything like that. So today we have, but they all told a story. So she starts this false religion, and matter of fact, the religion is called, and I don't know exactly what name they might have used back then, but it was this: Mother-Child religion. It's the oldest in history. And so Semiramis starts this religion, and I can't remember. Well, what is will go on here? It's the mother-child religion. I don't know what they call it exactly yet, but you're going to find out where she got her insights into starting this religion. In the original, this system depicted by means of constellations the story of Satan's rebellion, the war in heaven, his subversion of mankind, the fall of Adam and Eve, the promise of one to come who would suffer and die to relieve man from the curse of sin, then be installed as Lord of creation, and then final resubjugation of the cosmos to God through him. So that's what they use the constellations for. Her system of depicting constellations comes from the fallen angel, I can't pronounce his name, Kogabel. Now these fallen angels are listed in the book of Jasher and in the book of Enoch. And so what happened was, the fallen angels had come to earth before the flood. Right? Before the flood, as it talks about. And they sinned in the fact they went into the women and produced giants. They actually had sex with them and produced giants. They monkeyed with the gene pool and produced giants. The Nephilim, the Raphaim, and the Anakim. It's all in there.
Nephilim?
The Nephilim, the Anakim, and Raphaim. I didn't put it here, but you can find those in the scriptures, the words, and the Anakim. Remember Goliath, you know the story of David and Goliath, everybody does. Well, Goliath was an Anakim, and he was 9-10 feet tall, and he had 6 other brothers. Well, the king that ruled that area, I forget his name, was almost 15 feet tall. And of course, Joshua and Caleb and the Israelites overthrew them and drove them out of the land, the giants. The giants fled the land and went to the Phoenicians, because they had connection with the Phoenicians. The Phoenicians ferried them across the Mediterranean to an island off of Italy. Corsica, and that's where they went. And and you can go there now and see the remains. They had built
The remains of their bodies, or?
well, that too. Their tombs, their castles, and their bodies, their bones are all there. And the people today living in an island claim to be ancestors of them. Some of them are. Some of them are, and they still come out somewhat giants. Tall, very tall. But they had, I think, oh, jeez, I forget how many thousands of those fortresses they built. You can see it's all on it's right there. But that's what happened. They came from Canaan because the Phoenicians and them had some kind of connection, and they ferried them over there because they were driven out of the land of Canaan. That's where they went. And on that story goes. So anyhow, this fallen angel, Kogabel, also the fallen angel, I can't even pronounce it.
Bargajal.
Yeah, Bargajal, through his, taught this new evil religion, and what we call astrology, or portent prophetic. The creation and use of drugs was also thought to be from fallen angel Semjaza, and casting of spells in the book of Enoch. So here we have it. Now we know where Semiramis got all her stuff from. The false, this religion of hers came from the fallen angels. Fallen angels gave Semiramis the information to start this false religion. And in her religion, her mother child religion.
Strange name for a religion, huh? No.
Well, it wasn't called that, but that's what it is. That's what it was. I don't know what they called it. Never did find out exactly what that was, but we do know this. And it was all recorded in the Kabbalah, blackest book in witchcraft.
Kabbalah? Kabbalah?
Kabbalah. That's Kabbalah.
Is it the same thing as like the one that Madonna uses, like the Kabbalah, or is it Kabbalah?
Well, it probably is the same thing. If you go to, well, I don't know if you see, I've changed a lot of this one. I don't know if you have that. So some of these pages are missing, and I think that's one
Because
I.
you had the big book, that's why.
Yeah, well, I didn't print it out. Anyhow, the Kabbalah, and there it is. And that's those. This would be the tree of life that they have, their tree of life, and it's full of esoteric knowledge, the Kabbalah, and it's about ancient Babylon. And here you have a rendition of it, and these creatures here are fallen angels, or they're chirimas.
That's what they look like.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's exactly what they look like. Yeah. And these are probably chirimas because they did all kinds of genetic manipulation. They mixed human with animal DNA, and you know,
Like
people.
they're doing now.
Yeah, well, it's being done now. It's never stopped, really. When you see in the pyramids, you see their so-called gods and how they got different heads on them. Well, they were real. They weren't just pictures on the wall. They were real, and actually they forced the people to worship them, worship those things, and they called them living God. They were gods. But anyhow, the point was that Kabbalah, and I will, or Kabal, K-A-B-B, K-A-B-B, I'll just write it out here for you. K-A-B-B, where's it? Come on, okay. That's right, K-A-B, yeah, there we go. All right, K-A-B-B-L, K, H-A-L, A-L-A-H, Kabbalah, that's pronounced.
Oh, because they pronounce it the Kabbalah.
No, it's, well, I know, but if you go online, you can hear Jewish scholars saying the word properly. It's Kabbalah. It's Kabbalah. And Kabbalah too. That was a book. And they recorded all the spells, and et cetera, in that book. And this was all happening.
Is it not the Quran?
No.
It's, okay, something
No,
different.
no. We'll get into that study. I don't think, unfortunately, I got to get more pages for your books. So I've been changing things. Okay, there was. So they were giving her this information. She was a willing party to it. As you see, they had a new religion, or a new form came out of this called this.
Astrology.
There's where astrology came from. And what
From
did
that book or from?
Oh, from the fallen angels.
Okay.
Yeah. And what did the fallen angels tell that these constellations were? The names we have in those constellations today, where did they come from? The fallen angels.
Oh, did they?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's what they are, fallen angels.
She was not sure what I named, shrieking. She took her test.
Right.
Sorry, but
Tell
okay.
her that I will be marking it later and send it, email to me. So that's where astrology showed up first time in history. And what it was, and what's astrology? It says that
So it came out of that.
stars, planets,
So they named the stars, the fallen angels named the stars?
they named the constellations that are there now. That's not their original names.
Okay.
So and here's what they tried to do. So they said stars, planets, all this
Yeah.
had an effect on the nature of men. In other words, if you were born under a sign, you're born under their sign,
Like an Aries or a,
you know, or Scorpio, whatever, then your personality would be molded after that. Would be molded into that.
so there's really nothing to that biblically.
Well,
Or is it all?
not, yes and no. Because now we're going to show you something, go into something else here. When you were born, which kingdom were you born into?
Satan's.
Satan's kingdom. And the instant the sperm entered the egg, what happened?
Satan
Did what?
was able to tempt you.
No.
What, when the sperm,
Here's the
you were
egg.
born in Satan's kingdom.
That's right, you're
You were
born in
conceived
Satan.
in Satan's kingdom.
And when this little sperm stuck his little head through, he instantly stuck his head through,
Satan.
no. That egg then became what? When as soon as that little sperm went into that egg, what did it?
Baby.
It became.
Satan's spawn.
No, well, in a sense, right, but it's more than that. It became a person. And God gave it the spirit, soul, and the body began to build. Right?
Yeah.
But because you weren't born in God's kingdom, who else has access to that egg?
Satan.
Correct. How?
From the family line of sin.
But how does that work? No, you don't know.
Spiritually.
No. Also comes into that egg at that time, this. Strong man.
Oh, strong man. Yep.
Who begins to build a kingdom. And comes with him are all the family line curses.
Yeah.
That's what happened the instant this became a person, he had a legal right because it's in his kingdom. Now, it's not 100% proven, but it's pretty close to the theory. Whenever you were born, whatever month that was, you fall under one of these astrology symbols. And that symbol carries with it personality characteristics. And of course, that person will show those characteristics by what's out there. So that's where it gets in. And more than likely, that's why all those constellations carry demonic, they're really fallen angels, names and fallen angels behind them, behind going on, because they have a legal right, because you're born in their kingdom. That's why. So the first time in history, astrology shows up under Semiramis. First time. That's where it starts. And all that transpires the instant sperm enter the egg.
Astronomy is different than astrology.
Right. Astronomy is a
That's about-
study of the stars, the
Yeah.
planets, and from a scientific point of view. Astrology is not. Astrology is a whole different ball of wax. As a matter of fact, hold the thought. And I will tell you exactly what it is.
Because a lot of people go get their astrology charts and their astrology, you know.
That's right. That's very demonic. It's all forbidden. Observer of times. It's all forbidden. It's all part of this. Let's see. Astrology is the belief that the stars and planets, sun, moon, have a mysterious influence over human beings, establishing their personalities and characteristics and influencing the events of their lives. This all came from the fallen angels through Semiramis. So That's what.
Because actually, I mean, like when babies are born and menstruational cycles, you know, all that, like the moon, like at school, I mean, certain things do have a role to play in your body and your
If it is,
doesn't
it's
it? Or no?
not really. Where does it say in the scriptures? Only thing that the moon could have any effect on would be the gravitational pull.
Okay, because I know that it does on the ocean.
Of course, because it's a gravitational pull. Okay,
The ocean's alive.
and here is Science 101. Remember when you probably remember this in high school? You have two bodies in the universe, a planet here and a planet here. All right, this one's a lot bigger than this one. So what does it do? It has more influence or more magnetic pull. Well, the moon up here is not as big as the Earth, as far as I know it isn't, but it does big enough so as it goes around, it pulls on the water, pulls on everything as it goes around. It's pulling because there's a gravitational pull. Even though it stays, but there's still enough pull. Sun the same way. We go around the sun, same thing.
So what are all these like blood moons, blue moons?
Because those are
But those
signs.
are not astrology.
Those are not signs. Those are God's signs.
Okay.
God says He put them there for signs. And of course, they claim these are the signs. They are not. These are from fallen angels, demonic stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right here. And of course, this Barkiel, or whatever his name is, he was responsible for this. So that's where astrology came from. That's what it does, what they say it does, and it doesn't, because that means that your whole life is all laid out, and it's just fate's going to do this, do that. It's a lie. It's an absolute lie. But as long as you're in that kingdom, they have a legal right to put things in there and build a kingdom. And as long as you walk in that sense realm and you're yielding to it all the time, you're actually helping them build it. You know, for example, once you reach a certain age, they run things through your mind about, say, sexual things because of the hormones. And the devil will love to put all kinds of stuff in your path to create fornication. Or you get to the place when they say, okay, now you're there, let's try some drugs. And drugs go along your way, so, oh yeah, I'll try that. Well, you just help the demons out. You just help destroy yourself. And you don't know it, but
Right.
that's it. Oh yeah, it's all by legal rights. So there's where astrology comes from. Good old Semiramis. First time in history, these elementary truths were corrupted by her, rather quite obviously by the evil one controlling her in the mystic cycle. We're in one. Okay, now we're in one. The great dragon is depicted as the rightful lord of the universe, whose throne has been temporarily usurped by one whom we can recognize as the God of the Bible. Thus, the Luciferian doctrine is birthed. Now we get the bottom of it all. And now we have astrology going great guns. Semiramis is roaring along. And all the occult stuff and all the curses and by the way, there's a lot more to it. There are fallen angels who taught herbs, who taught makeup, about using makeup, taught how to curse and how to break curses. Oh yeah, there were a whole bunch of them. It's all in the book of Jasher and Enoch. So now,
So herbs, like to make herbs like for a strong, because some herbs are good. I
well,
mean,
of course herbs are good, but you can in casting spells and stuff, they use those things. Oh yeah, it's called sorcery. Pharmakia. Where do you think pharmakia comes from? It's a form of sorcery.
that's there's a book called that. Have you read it?
I don't know, maybe not.
Pharmakia is really witchcraft.
Yeah, that's what it really is. And so most of the drugs you take today is all from that.
Yeah.
And it comes ultimately down from this up here. And it's for evil to destroy. Oh yeah, destroy. So now we have the famous Luciferian doctrine. There it is. If I was to, and I'll ask you right now, you may know it enough. Do you know what the Luciferian doctrine is? Have you ever heard it talked about in other fellowships, churches?
Yeah, but I probably don't have the same definition you got.
Well, tell me what your
Well, they're just
definition.
worship Lucifer.
Oh, that would be so easy if that was it. And that's what the devil wants you to believe.
It's basically churches that we have now. I mean,
Yeah.
the doctrine, what it is, really they're saying that even the Antichrist is false gospel, false teachings. I've heard that.
No,
That-
there is an Antichrist. It's going to be a real thing, you know.
I mean, the mark of the beast, I'm sorry. the mark
Oh,
of the
yeah, they say right.
Like they
right.
say that, I'm sorry.
Oh no, you're right.
They say that the mark of the beast is the false doctrines and the Luciferian doctrines. And
Well, don't you think the devil would try to cover his tracks in the end time? Of course he's going. But here's the truth: the Luciferian. I've talked to a lot of Christians. You mention that word, and it's like goes right over there. Oh yeah, I know what it is. Can you tell me what it is? Oh yeah, it's worshiping Lucifer. What you said, basically.
Yeah.
Lucifer. Oh yeah, it's Lucifer.
well, it's basically a false doctrine that's sneaking
That's
into
right.
churches.
That's right. I'm glad you see it, because now you're going to, because we're going to the roots of this, where all this comes. I'm going to show you how it got from here, and guess where it ended up? That doctrine. It's right in here. The end time demonic book for convert Christians to worshiping Satan. Here it is, and it comes from here to here.
But they really believe they're worshiping the Lord.
It doesn't
So
matter
they're
what you.
deceived.
Doesn't want you to believe. It matters.
Because, I mean, people that read that Bible, they have no concept of
No,
anything
no,
about
they don't.
anything that's like, that's my Bible, that's a Bible, you know, it's a Bible.
Right, because they don't know the Word of God. And like I said, before it's done, you're going to know. So this happened right here. Oh, let's put a little something else to it. Help. This was happening around the years 6,000.
The falling angels, or
No, all the Semiramis.
It
Well,
was
fallen
that-
angels long for that. 6,000 plus or minus years.
years ago.
From Adam to there was about 6,000 years. Adam was about 13,000 years ago. 13 to 15, depending on who.
So years from Adam.
Yep, 6,000. So you see, and this doctrine now comes on the scene.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it has certain things to it.
Mm-hmm.
There are, and these you're going to have to memorize.
Okay.
Yes, you'll need to know it. So I'm going to show you how it gets from there down into your Bibles and in the churches today, and it does get there. Trust me, it does. Okay, number one, as it says, the great dragon is depicted as the rightful Lord. Now, to make
Great
this,
dragon is depicted, okay.
okay, now to make this just a hair easier, you turn over a couple pages. You'll find a page that says
Luciferian doctrine.
the Luciferian Doctrine. Ta-da! I'll write it out for you. There it is. And you need to study it, you need to learn it, because you're going to run across it.
Is you gonna write it out the same as this? Okay.
Pretty much so. So number one, the dragon. I'll probably abbreviate it. And who is the dragon?
Lucifer.
Who is the dragon?
Lucifer.
Well, Lucifer is no longer existing. Satan, really. The dragon is Satan. The dragon.
It says Lucifer.
I understand.
Okay.
I understand, but Lucifer is gone. He was
After he fell from heaven, so Lucifer
right,
was
he was
in.
burned up and taken
So now,
out.
you want me to mark that out with
No,
Satan?
no, just leave it there. You can say Lucifer because it's called Luciferian Doctrine.
Okay.
We'll do this. Rightful ruler. We're under space here. G-N-I-V-E-R-S-H. So he says number one, first part of the doctrine, he's the rightful ruler of the universe. Number two, he created man. And of course, the NIV says that Jesus fell from heaven. Satan was not thrown out. Lucifer was not thrown out of heaven. Jesus fell from heaven. He's the fallen one. Lucifer is the rightful creator of everything. It's right in there.
In the NIV.
In the NIV. And we'll be looking at that. Don't worry. Next, promises a child. And this is where we get this doctrine. Let's place her right here. A child would. This is weird. Would be born of the Divine Mother. Will be born of the Divine Mother. Or henceforth, the mother child worship came into play. There's a reason for it. It's the oldest religion in the world. Within 1,000 years of Semiramis, the whole earth would fall into this, the whole earth. 1,000 years.
We don't know what the mother-child worship is, though.
Well, sure you do.
Just child worshiping the mother?
No.
Or the mother worshiping?
What religion today has the mother-child worship big time?
Oh, Catholic.
The Mary worship,
Yeah.
mother-child.
Yeah.
Down through history, all the major religions did.
Right. Yeah.
Islam didn't, but that's about one of them
Okay,
didn't.
yeah.
So there we go. Number 4.
Mm-hmm.
Child. Now this child here,
The mother-child would overthrow God.
it's the child. Not the mother, the child.
The child will overthrow God.
Child will become God. And take title. Whoop, might be.
Well, you got 5 and 4. 4 is 4, and 5 is 5 and 9.
Okay,
So, see, I don't know.
you probably have the older one.
See, mine says 5, and that one's 4.
Yeah, see,
So,
see, they're backwards. That's, again, you got one of those old books. I gotta fix it.
okay, so what do I do? Mark one of these
Just change
This
the
one?
numbers. Just change the numbers around.
out? Okay.
And because the child will become God and take title to the earth.
Okay.
Remember, Lucifer lost it, and Satan lost it.
Mm-hmm.
Number 5, it should be, child will overthrow God. Will overthrow God. And then 6, the big one, child will what?
Return. rulership.
Return. Ruler. To serpent. There it is. There's Luciferian doctrine. Luciferian doctrine. You need to. I will get you new pages. So I need to redo this whole book. Give you all new books. There you go. That's the Luciferian doctrine. That's the real Luciferian doctrine. And that's where it began.
Mm-hmm.
And where did they get it from? The fallen angels.
Mm-hmm.
They brought that doctrine down. And that there is the whole ball of wax.
Yeah.
Right there. Right there. That doctrine is alive and well. We're going to show it to you how it came right down through history. Ultimately. So there we have the mother-child. That's where we get the mother-child worship.
Catholic.
Yeah, well, it isn't really Catholic at all.
Well, what is it?
Babylonian.
Oh, it's not Babylonian.
Semiramis.
Catholic is sane?
Well, they just practice that fallen part of it.
Okay.
They're not the only ones that do it. They're not the only ones that does it. Down through history, you'll see it all over the place. In Greece they had it, Rome had it, all of it. The fables were based upon the widely known story. Just go back to the page where we started with the doctrines there. Okay, yeah, there we go. It says the fables were based upon the then widely known story of the constellations and were introduced under the guise of revealing the hidden esoteric knowledge concealed in them, regardless of the fact that the original was quite straightforward. So they had to use esoteric knowledge for all this stuff. And that's why in her priesthood and all this, she sets a priesthood up and everything.
Secret knowledge.
Secret knowledge, that's esoteric. And the esoteric knowledge came from the fallen angels. They have the secret knowledge. See, there was certain knowledge God forbid man to have. Mostly what they brought, man was not supposed to know. Because they also taught men how to kill one another, how to make weapons, how to do all these evil things. And they weren't supposed to, and God said, no, it was being no-no. Although this esotericism was the second element of Saint Irenaeus' cult, it only masked the actual goal, which was the worship of the heavenly hosts, which the Bible equates with Satan's army of fallen angels. So here we have it. The first phase of this religion came out of astrology. Then and of course on all the stuff they were teaching, and as we saw here, and there's a lot more of what they taught, and I need to bring in more of that, I guess, next time, or study that, bring in the study. And the doctrine was passed down now to her, and that's the foundation. That was the foundation of that religion that she created. And it was all worshiping one thing. Worship of fallen angels. That's it. They were worshipped. That's why the signs of the zodiac were actually names of fallen angels that were doing this stuff.
Like Aries.
Yeah,
Fallen angel.
They're fallen angels, yeah. That's their names they used. Oh yeah, all of them. Yeah. So that whole religion revolves around that worship of fallen angels. And astrology was the beginning of it, and then the Kabbalah, where they put all this information in, this secret esoteric knowledge is being written down about all this stuff. It's the blackest book in witchcraft, and is being held today to be given to the Antichrist when he comes into power. See, there's certain things that Antichrist has to have to be in power. First of all, he has to have the seal of the High Priest of Babylon, which the Pope carries, and given to him. And then he has to have the legal authority comes from the Kabbalah. So the Kabbalah will be brought and given to him.
To the Pope?
Mm-hmm.
Or to...
The Pope's a false prophet, I believe.
Who's the Kabbalah going to be given to?
The Antichrist.
Oh, okay.
Who it is. The Pope will give him the seal, and then the book will be given to him as a legal title. Okay. Be in power. It's all there. So we have worship. Okay, now we can probably eliminate this now. This will be going over and over again. Now you see it. Dragon is the rightful ruler. Great man. Child be born to a divine mother. Mother-child. And guess what? Semiramis is going to name herself.
See that.
No. Guess what she's going to name herself when she becomes empress?
Oh.
Guess what her title's going to be? This one.
Queen of Heaven.
Queen of Heaven. So therefore, let's stay down here. Divine Mother. That's her. And she would bear a child, and his name would be Tammuz. His real name is Damuz, but depending on Hebrew, it's Tammuz. But anyhow, she's going to be seated as empress, as Queen of Heaven. And see how it was brought into play. That's where the mother-child worship came, and she had a child called Tammuz, really, and we'll get into that too. And of course, then it says the child will become God, take title to the earth.
So when is she going to become Queen in Heaven? That's just what she's called after all this took place, or is this?
Oh, we haven't got there. She's still going to be seated as empress. She's going to kill Nimrod. She kills Nimrod. We'll read on here. So we have some things going on, and that's what we want to put down here. I'm going to erase this now. So I get more room. It's all in your books. I'm sure Sheila can follow along from her book. I know see, we don't have page numbers, and there's a reason for it. Because every time I start putting page numbers in, I have to change things, and then the pages get all messed up. So, until this book is ready to print, go into printing into a workbook, there won't be any page numbers on it. So now we have three elements to this worship. 1, 2, 3. I'll put them down here. The second element is heavenly host. Worship. First one, of course, was astrology. What we call astrology. I don't think they called it that back then, but whatever. They may have it. And the third...
Well, portent was another one.
Yeah, portent.
Portent.
Portent, prophetic. That's what it means. So, that's a good with their astrology, or... I'm not sure I spelled it. T-E-N-T. Portent. Portent prophetic. It's a little term for it. They I don't know what they get used back then, but we call it astrology today, and it's close enough for us. And the third element of this religion was emperor worship. So, Nimrod was worshipped as a god. Emperor worship, he was worshipped as a living god. And he had some supernatural powers that were given to him as well. So that's why they probably thought he was. So those are the three elements of this new religion, mother-child religion, that was being developed. Right there. The religion was propagated by a hierarchy of priests and priestesses. So now we have to make this thing work, so we're going to need some people to help out here. So we're going to set up a whole system of priests. And priestesses. Boom, boom. Another important point of this. So we see we have a real religion being built here, don't we? To whom were assigned the task of initiating the populace at large into its ascending degrees of revelation, culminating at the highest level in both direct worship of Satan and demon possession. So, and again, this is how it works, and it still does. The common people couldn't understand, did not understand, so they had to have the esoteric knowledge given to them by the priest. The priest is telling them what they wanted them to hear. The Catholic Church does that. A lot of Protestant churches do the same thing. They just put a different name on it, but they're doing the same thing. Although Nimrod was a brilliant strategist, he made a fatal blunder when he allowed Semiramis to retain full control over the religious hierarchy, and through it the minds and hearts of the people. So in other words, she took care of all this religion stuff, and gained, and of course with her priests and with this system. And what's one of the things they used in that system was called the confessional. That's where it appeared first. They would use a confessional and tell people, well, you must come into the confessional and tell your secrets. So they would do that, and then they would use that information to do whatever they needed to do, destroy people, destroy whatever. Today, the largest and most efficient spy network in the world are the Jesuits. We have to do a whole study on the called the black side, dark side. Tell you about Jesuits, because they're nothing more than just an offshoot of this whole thing. They're nothing more than that. They're promoting the Luciferian doctrine. Oh yeah, under the guise of worshiping the Pope, because the Pope would fall under this emperor worship.
That's what they do with China, the emperors.
Well, they used to.
And emperors.
Yeah, they used to.
The Liz.
They don't know more. It's communist government there now. Well, they don't have emperors anymore.
Well, they're still there.
I don't know. I don't think so. The last emperor was absorbed into the Communist Party.
Black private
Maybe. Yeah.
emperors, because they got a lot of money. Really, the women over there have all the money and feed the Chinese men. Emperors, they call them.
I could be. I wouldn't know. So I don't belong. I don't go to China. I can't.
I was there for 16 days. I heard all the stories.
Well, there you go. You probably
But-
could. Okay.
Who knows?
So that's what old Nimrod made a mistake. For when a schism occurred between them, she was able to turn it from a tool of support, tool of support,
To a deadly weapon.
to a deadly weapon. The rift between husband and wife occurred when the queen bare an illegitimate son. Uh-oh, the queen gets pregnant. Nimrod says, wait a minute, that ain't my kid. What are you doing? And the king threatened her with both dethronement and exposure of her true origin. So he was going to say, okay, you're no longer going to be empress, and I'm going to tell old people this who you really are. Sunet Amour, you madam. Semiramis, of course, would not allow this to take place and devised a plot to overthrow Nimrod. During the course of the New Year's festival, at which event Nimrod's rule was celebrated, there was a certain feast exclusively for the royal family in the upper echelon of the priesthood. During this feast, which included courses of psychedelic and hallucinogenic drugs, which the fallen angels had taught how to make, pharmakia, a year-old ram was traditionally sacrificed by being torn limb from limb while still alive, and its flesh eaten raw. This ram symbolized the old year passing into the heavens to allow room for the new year. A newly born lamb was presented, which symbolized the new year, and would be kept and fattened for the next year's ceremonies. I got to take a small break. I have to go to the bathroom. Sorry, I cannot wait. Sorry about that, but
It's okay.
I drank too much coffee.
I get it.
Too much coffee. Okay, so here we have the ceremony. That year, Semiramis directed the ritual according to the formula, with one exception. Now you remember, they have these orgies or these parties, and they would be all psyched up, all the priests and priestesses on these drugs. And then they would go into this frenzy, this killing frenzy or death stuff, or you know. So anyhow, this formula, with the exception that when the time came for the ram to be slaughtered, it was the king who was to be torn to pieces at the hands of the drug-crazed priesthood. And Semiramis' son, called bastard son, was installed as king. Thus Nimrod, the mighty hunter, died a horrible death as a trapped beast himself. So that's what happened to Nimrod. Boom, torn apart. Semiramis named her son Damu, or in the Sumerian, from the Sumerian dam, or blood, which in the later Babylonian language became Damuse. Damuse. Okay, now we can. Okay, we'll put up. Yeah, her son. These names, I spell these things around. And then Uzziah. Uzziah, and that's in Babylonian or Sumerian, but in Hebrew it was Tammuz. T-A-M-M-U-Z.
And in Greek it's Adonis.
Yeah, and Adonias. Yeah. And the Greek, A-D.
Well, Adonai is God, isn't it?
O, and Adonias, no. Adonai. Adonai. So this is Greek. This is Hebrew, and this is Babylonian. And that's different pronunciation. You'll hear about Tammuz more than anything else. But the Greeks call him Adonis. They worship him as that. Of course, Semiramis assumed the regency for her infant son. He was the son. And ruled as absolute monarchy for 42 more years. Wow. In order to avoid having to kill her son on the New Year's Day, she instituted an annual nationwide sports competition. The winner of which would have the honor of taking Damu's place and ascending into heaven to become a god. Does that sound familiar at all? What does that sound like? What do we call it today? The Olympics, maybe?
No.
Today it's Olympics from Mount Olympus. But that's not where it came from. Right here, Babylon, under Semiramis. And I'm sure when, of course, because the Greeks called it, you know, it all went that way. Anyhow, Semiramis was not unopposed in her arrogance. Oh no. Of the regency. However, and her rule as a woman, the military arm of the government was divided into two camps, for and against her. So the military says, oh, wait a minute, we're not going to follow that woman or that witch or whatever they wanted to call her. Oh no, there was a big war came out of this. But a lot of things came out of that war. Okay? A lot of things. So there was a war. Anyhow, they army split, and a short war ensued, which ended with the populace, roused by the priesthood, not only refused to support the rebels, but actively opposed them. In the course of this war, though, things became so close that Semiramis was forced to build a system of walls and towers and gates around Babylon to defend herself. She was thus the first to build fortifications, and her crown afterwards was in the form of turreted walls of Babylon. So the first time in history, because of this war, we now have walls, turrets, towers, gates, and gates, fortifications. Time in history of fortifications. She had to defend herself. She wasn't, well, it wasn't 100% all win. She almost was killed, and then they almost got her. But because they roused the people up, and of course, then the crown they made after her looked like the wall of the turret type crown. To oppose the accusations of mere womanhood laid against her, that's what, well, you're just a mere woman. She had herself deified as the mother of the god Damu, since only a god can beget a god. And what was the Luciferian doctrine?
Mother, daughter.
Not daughter. Mother, child. But what?
Mother, child.
But what did it say in the Luciferian doctrine? It said what? A divine mother. There would be a child born one day of a divine mother. A goddess on earth. Divine means goddess. Okay? And I'll go back here. So she had herself deified. She had to become that divine goddess. The mother of Damus. And installed as, drumroll, Queen of Heaven. She was installed as Queen of Heaven. She was a goddess. She had a god named Damus, and ultimately became Tammuz, and pictured in the constellation Cassiopeia, which the ancients had intended to be as a corporate representation of those people faithful to God who will be enthroned by him after the end of the age. That's what it originally meant. So she was carried out in Cassiopeia. Which, by the way, during the blood moons and things that just happened, it showed her, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on in the heavens, but Cassiopeia was this Queen of Heaven, represents her, and it had the planet coming out. There was a whole bunch of stuff here that happened beginning of the year that was a sign in heaven, signs that God was giving of end times. In spite of her cleverness, though, she also sowed the seeds of her own destruction. As she raised her son, she imbued him with divinity in the eyes of the priests and people, as the means of remaining control as a divine mother without seeming to aggrandize herself. As Damus grew, he became used to having every whim instantly gratified by a subversive, indeed groveling populace. Oh, the king, the god Damus is here. Whoa, good old Damus. For safety's sake, she had a personal bodyguard companion group, which he was never without, and which formed an elite corps of soldiers loyal and accountable to him alone. Upon coming to maturity and demanding of his mother to be installed as king, now he said, well, Mom, you know, I'm 21 years old, I should be king now, or 18, whatever. Okay, just step down, let me have it. And she's not only refused him, no, son, I can't step down. I am the Queen of Heaven. Didn't you know that? Didn't you notice I'm a goddess? But seeing him now as a challenge to her rule, slated him for the same death. Oh yeah, for the same death. Your page is stuck here. She had made for his father. Oh, Damus, we're going to have a festival this year, and we want you to come. Damus caught on to her scheme and preempted his assumption by slaying his mother with his own sword and putting down any priestly protest by purging the hierarchy of all who would not vow allegiance to him. Thus, Semiramis died after reigning queen over Babylon for 100 102 years. That's
She
how,
lived that long?
oh yeah. People were still living long lives then. Still living long lives. This event laid the groundwork for all of the pagan religious systems of antiquity, as well as many alive today. Semiramis in particular was the model and original of every goddess and female cult figure in the ancient and modern worlds, either directly or by derivation. And thus it essentially to know her story in order to discern what is factual legend and what is mere myth. So there you have it. That's Semiramis. And that's where all the evil in the earth that we have today came from. And the root and the foundation of it is the Luciferian doctrine. There we go. It's all based on hidden esoteric knowledge contained in the constellations and revealed by Satan's fallen angels to Semiramis. Now, this is vitally important because that doctrine is alive and well today. Right in your churches, right in the governments, our shadow government. The Council of Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission, Bilderbergers. Those are all they say Illuminati, but really they're not. They're all Luciferian doctrine promoters. So in other words, they're bringing that doctrine to the end time, bring it to the forefront. And that's why the last Bible that was written for Satan, there it is, NIV. That's it. That's the Luciferian Bible. That's what they call it. They call it. So, there we have Semiramis. And now you understand where all evil in earth began. With her and how it came into being. You will be tested on this heartily. Let's put it that way, because I want to make sure everybody gets it. Because when you see how we get to there, this comes right down through it. Right down to it. There's two sides. There's the Alexandrian side, and then there's the Antiochian side.
But is it only just an IV, or there's others?
Oh,
right?
all of them. This here is the culmination of it all. We're gonna trace what we call here the land of bondage. Turn the page. Now yours is a little bit different.
Mine's right here.
Yeah, take that out.
Take it out?
We're going to move it. We're going to move that. All of that should be. Take it out.
This too?
All those pages. Those 3 pages. No, just those 3 pages. There.
Okay.
Okay. Now click shut, and we're going to go to. We're going to go to the back. Not all the way to the back.
All the way?
No, not all the way.
Okay.
I'm going to go to. Okay, go until you find the original Bible line. And keep going. Flip your tabs. Flip the tab. Flip the tab. Flip the tab. Okay, the original Bible. Okay, now you're going to go back 1 tab back, and you should come up with New Age Bible versions. Yeah, see what Wycliffe.
I came with John Wycliffe.
Yeah, he's in the wrong spot. Should be
The original Bible line.
No. See, those books are all messed up. I'm going to have to take them and fix them. Let me see. Hold that. See, in this. Yeah, see, those, that's not where that goes. And then I got stuff everywhere I shouldn't be. Because I've changed things around so much.
This is nothing about aliens.
Huh? We're gonna. You know what? I wonder. Yeah, there.
That's where it came from.
Yeah, I know that's where it came from. That's not what it's supposed to go. All right, well, let's put it here for right now. I'm gonna have to take these and fix them. They're all messed up. I mean, for now, that's on that. It's out of the way. So we want to go to land of bondage.
Right now. Filio.
Should be Philo of Alexandria. Philo of Alexandria in your book. Miss Sheila, there it is. In Philo. Now, yeah, see this. It's hard to keep up with this stuff. Trust me, it's very hard. No, not that one. So go back to this one. There. If you go back to this chart.
Family line.
Yeah, family line chart. And you get, yeah, and no, you're too far, wrong way.
This is it.
Okay, shouldn't be there, that's why. Go ahead and leave it there for right this minute. It should be over everlasting God.
Yeah, it is right.
Okay,
here.
so that is right, okay. As you'll see, what we're looking for is a time frame.
Okay.
All right, you see Semiramis 6,590, right? Luciferian doctrine. Jesus Christ is born in 133, and it's 11,000 years from Adam. And then you see Philo on that chart. And Philo is born 50 AD, and he died 20 BC. So you see, from Tammuz to him, it's about 6,000 years, give or take. Maybe 5,000. Yeah, probably 5,000 years till we get to him. But all this time, all the stuff she started didn't die out. Within 1,000 years, this religion she started, all this covered the whole earth. Every culture on earth, every society on earth was practicing this, except the Jews. And even the Jews got caught up in it.
So 5,000 years till...
Yeah, till Christ. Well, till Philo, it's about the same time. Yeah. See, because if you put 5 to that, it's 11,000. About 5,000 years. Yeah. So there we have that part of the history of the time frame, a long time. So during that period of time, though, because this religion spread over the whole world in 1,000 years, every culture on earth was practicing the mother child. Well, you look at it, the Greeks had it in their goddesses, the Romans had it, the Babylonians had it, the Assyrian, all of them had forms of this all the way down. You can look that up in history, it's right clear, and you see all the statues and stuff they had. So we come along, and of course, the Jews were in and out. They were, first of all, they were when they came out of Egypt, went into the promised land, and God says, if you'll do all these things, and you'll be their God, and for a lot of time they did worship God. But then they were told not to get involved with the people of the land, and they did, and they took on all their gods, their idols, of doing all that stuff, from worshiping Baal to all the way down, all those false gods down there, and they passed their sons and daughters through the fire to Moloch and all that stuff. So then God would take them into bondage, and they were taken to Babylon. Well, in Babylon, some things happened in Babylon. And of course the Babylonian system was to take the best of everybody and then turn them into Babylonians, to re-educate them and redo the stuff, and they did. And of course, as you know, Daniel and Shadrach and Abednego, they were different. They were different, but also the priesthood, the Jewish priesthood, was taught the Kabbalah, and all the secret esoteric stuff, and so they brought it out with them, a lot of it. Prior to Babylon, they didn't have a synagogue system. After that, they did. There's a whole lot of things to get into later on. But all that came out, and so back and forth. But they were still a remnant that kept the laws of Moses, the Pentateuch, the prophets, and Psalms, the prophets, and let's see what else. Anyhow, in the Septuagint. And we'll get into what the Septuagint is very soon. So, but we go to Philo. Philo, some scholars or some Christian scholars think, oh, he was a great man. He was not a great man. First of all, Egypt always is referred to as what? Land of bondage. In Exodus, go to Exodus 20. Exodus 20. Verse 2. I am Lord thy God, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Of course we know it was bondage, because the Jewish people were put in bondage. And people don't realize that when Joseph went to Egypt and became the ruler of Egypt, basically, under the Pharaoh, and he brought in his father and all that, the Jews came to Egypt, and they were given the land of Goshen, the Pharaoh did. And everybody think, well, Moses came along right away. No, it was 150 years later and then another 400 years, during a 400-year period. So by the time Moses came along, nobody even knew who Joseph was anymore. And it was like 400 years, he was lost to their minds. And of course the Jews become slaves, or made slaves along the way. The Bible has a negative outlook of Egypt always. So Egypt is always a land of bondage, remember that. We find the Alexandrian is mentioned only 4 times in Scripture, and each time is bad. Acts, we're going to go look at it, you see this? So we see every time it's mentioned, it's not in a good sense. So it will kind of make you think that if that's the case, certainly some stuff coming out of there probably is not good. And it's so right. Acts chapter 6, verse 9. Then there arose of the synagogue, which is called the synagogue of the Libertarians and Cyrenians and Alexandrians, and them of Cilicia and Asia, disputing with Stephen. So who was Stephen? You know who he was? Okay, Stephen was when the disciples were having to wait on tables instead of being able to pray and minister the word, pray and fast, minister the word. So they said, well, let us pick out from among us someone who is full of faith and who we can set up to be deacons, really. He was the first deacon. And let them go out and serve the tables. And Stephen, if we follow his life, which later on in these courses we will, you'll find out that he was a powerful man of God, full of the Spirit, full of all this stuff. And deacons today don't even come close. I mean, even elders don't come close to what he was. So anyhow, all these Alexandrians were debating with him. And that's a form of bondage. The second mention of Alexandria is 1824, Acts 18:24. So we see right there they were opposed to what? To the power of God. They were opposed to the move of God through Stephen. And of course he was put to death. Acts, and Paul had a hand in it. Acts 18:24. And certain Jews named Apollos, born in Alexandria, another good man and mighty in the Scriptures, came to Ephesus. So Apollos is another one. And Apollos was, didn't have it quite right. This man was instructed in the way of the Lord and began fervent in the Spirit. He spake and taught diligently the things of the Lord, knowing only the baptism of John. So he didn't know, And of course, and it says here that, and he began to speak boldly in the synagogue, whom when Aquila and Priscilla had heard, they took him unto them and expounded unto him the way of God more perfectly. So he was trying to do his best, but he really wasn't doing good. That's another place where this happened. Third and fourth mention of Alexander are very similar. After Paul is arrested in Acts 21 and appeals his case to Caesar, he is sent to Rome and eventually death on a ship from all places, Alexandria, a ship of bondage. Sure. And now Paul's on the way to Rome, and of course the story goes, well, the next one tells you, while sailing to Rome, Paul's ship was sunk in a tempest. After spending 3 months on the island of Melita or Malta, I was there in the military. We stopped in Malta, the ship did. He is sent on his way to eventually death on another ship. And where is the second ship from that is so ready to carry Paul to his death? Alexandria. See, more bondage. Bondage. So then comes along a Roman philosopher by the name of Philo of Alexandria. And he was born in 50 CE. And CE is Common Era. And it's just a way of clouding the issues. Clouding the issues. It's too bad the other people couldn't be here tonight because this is...
They're missing it.
Yeah, they are. They'll have to read it up because they can't go back over it. I'm limited on my time. So, Philo was born in 50 BC. And BC is not before Christ, before Common Era. I don't know why they do it that way. And he died in 20 AD. We call it after death. There it is. So whatever you see, if you see CE, whatever, BCE and all that, CE. CE is Common Era, BCE is before Common Era. You know, it's all confusing. This BC and AC. Philo represents the apex of Jewish Hellenism or syncretism. And that word syncretism is a combining of different beliefs while blending practices of various schools of thought. Syncretism involves the merging or assimilation of several original discrete traditions, especially in theology and mythology of religion. Philo included in his philosophy both Greek wisdom and Hebrew religion. Which he sought to fuse and harmonize by means of the art of the famous word allegory. So now the word allegory shows up. Okay, L. Allegory. And you're going to need to know that one big time. Allegory that he had learned from the Stoics. So here's what had happened. Now we have to look at a little bit of history here. By this time, Alexander the Great had conquered all of the world, all that part of the world. As a matter of fact, he had conquered most of the world. God had sent him through there. And what did Alexandria do? Every place he went, he spread Hellenism or his Greek philosophies, because the Greeks were very intelligent and they had theology and of course Plato and all those guys. So it spread whole region. And we can, if you do the history back there's a whole, in the Bible Atlas has great history on it about the wars and everything, but how the Jews were taken captive from Jerusalem and sent to Alexandria, and of course then they became established there, and of course they were Hellenistic Jews, and most of them couldn't speak Hebrew anymore. They spoke Greek, the Koine Greek. They had lost the ability to speak Greek, to speak Hebrew. So believe it or not, that's part of the whole deal here. So that set the stage, and the priests, the Hebrew priest, of course, they do both, and so Philo was also a Hebrew scholar as well. He was both, and so what he did with his syncretism, is he studied, let's read on, let's see. Of course, an allegory, what's an allegory? It's not a literal interpretation.
It's symbolic.
It's symbolic. Excellent. S-Y-M-B-O-L-I-C. Symbolic meaning. In other words, well, if it says water ran down the mountain, well, it doesn't really mean that. Even though it said, no, not that mean that. It means that, you know, heaven opened up and poured out a special blessing. That's allegory. It's still used today all over the place, unfortunately, because they allegorize scriptures right and left to make it say what they want it to say, not the literal interpretation, which we'll get into. All is coming. And of course, the allegory came from Stoics. Now, Stoicism is another word. If you go back to your definitions in the front, you'll find these words.
Yeah.
I have put here for you to learn.
Emotions, destructive qualities,
That's right.
logos.
Stoics, Stoicism. Matter of fact, number 11.
Self-control, fortitude.
For this week, everybody needs to do the next 5 words. Stoicism, Demiurge, Aristotelism, Polymath, Maimonides. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, we'll do 5. All the way down to Maimonides. But anyhow, Stoicism teaches the development of self-control and fortitude as a means of overcoming destructive emotions. The philosophy holds that becoming a clear and unbiased thinker allows one to understand the universe, reasons, logos. A primary aspect of Stoicism involves improving the individual's ethic and moral well-being. Virtue consists in a will that is in agreement with nature. So Stoics means to, say someone has a Stoic attitude, or they're a Stoic person. They're reserved, they're cold, they're withdrawn, that kind of thing. But but the allegory is a symbolism, and it came from the Stoics, Stoic teaching, and that came from Hellenism, Philo, a forerunner of Neoplatonism, translated Judaism into terms of Stoic, Platonic, and Neo-Pythagorean elements. Now, who was Pythagoras? Pythagorean. Do you know who Pythagoras was? Pythagoras was a mathematician, and you have what he taught is why you have stringed instruments today, harps and all that. Is because he taught. Well, part of his thing was that you have longer, shorter, and as you're shorter, you get different tones, And but he was a mathematician, Pythagorean elements, and held that God is spur-rational and can be reached only through ecstasy. And Philo held that the oracles of God supply the material for moral and religious knowledge. And of course, this is where, what kind of knowledge are they promoting? What's it called? Esoteric, hidden knowledge. That's what that means there when it says ecstasy, hidden knowledge. The earliest Christian philosophers, all such as Justin and Pythagoras, who attempted to connect Christianity with Platonism, and the Christian Gnostics of Alexandria. So now we have them connecting Plato with the scriptures. In other words, they would interpret the Pentateuch, or not Pentateuch, the Septuagint according to Plato's beliefs, Aristotle's beliefs. They mix it. Now you're into mixing things again. That's what all happened. And then, of course, Gnosticism comes in. Christian Gnosticism, now that's where that comes in. And what's Gnosticism? Salvation by works, basically. Heresy, right, but it's by works. In other words, you have to
worship the Creator instead of
right.
the creation.
You have to make yourself better so God will accept you, and that kind of stuff. And that's alive and well in churches today, big time. Especially Valentinus and the followers of Belisades also mirrored elements of Neoplatonism, albeit without its religious self-consistency, rigorous self-consistency. So basically, he took Judaism and mixed it with Plato and Aristotle, and uses the allegorical method of interpretation. So in other words, let's say the scripture says God, whatever you want to say now.
Symbolic.
Yeah, symbolic. Well, God, I can't think of one I can do it off the top of my head. God planted a garden east of Eden. Well, they might symbolize that away. Say, well, then, I know one that's happened. In the Old Testament, it talks about when they did sacrifices, they sacrificed 100,000 bulls or something. I heard some priest say one time, oh, that was just an allegory. No, that really never happened. It's just a story. And of course, and it'll also allegorize the book of Revelation, saying all those things are written there to scare people into becoming Christians. And that's preached in Christian churches. I've heard that. And of course, it's not. The educated class, however, had created for themselves from the classics in the so-called a pure medium of expression. So they had to have a pure medium of expression. In the same way, Philo formed his language by means of extensive reading of the classics. So now we have him, and what did he come up with? Classical.
Neo.
Language. Okay. Classical language. Now, that classical language was for the educated class. That's classical Greek. I should say Greek here. Okay? Now, the New Testament was written in Coney Greek, the common language. So everybody could understand everything. Because that's what they... So Jesus spoke not only Hebrew, but he spoke classical Greek, or not classical Greek, but he spoke Coney Greek as well. They probably spoke Hebrew most of the time, but they also could speak Coney Greek because they read their verses, scriptures, were written in Hebrew and Coney Greek. Okay. He quoted the epic and dramatic poets with special frequency and alludes to passages in their works. He was a wide acquaintance of the works of the Greek philosophers to which he was devoted, owing them his real scholarship. He himself says, and we'll go look it up if you want to, he holds the highest perception of truth is possible only after the study of the encyclopedic sciences. So there you go. He says the only truth you can really get comes from you've got to study the philosophers, and so he created classical Greek language, and only the educated could understand it. He made his philosophy the means of defending and justifying the Jewish religious truths. These truths he regarded as fixed and determined, and philosophy was merely an aid to truth and a means of arriving at it. So he says, you have to study Plato, you have to study this philosophy to know the truth. Because you can't read and know it. That's what he's saying. He's saying, well, because it's an allegory, and you have to understand it, and only can do that if you understand classical Greek, and only the educated can understand that. So we're going to tell you what it means as esoteric knowledge. Well, we're going to tell you what it means, and then you'll follow that. Mm-hmm. And that's what that word comes from. Oh, there's a lot more going on here. Oh, it gets better from here. With this view with this end in view, Philo chose from the philosophical tenets of the Greeks, refusing those that did not harmonize with the Jewish religion, the Aristotelian doctrine of the eternity and indestructibility of the world. Philo's national Jewish education is also a factor and to be taken into account. While he read the Old Testament chiefly in the Greek translation, that would be the Septuagint, not deeming it necessary to use the Hebrew text because he was under the wrong impression that Greek corresponded with it. Okay, so a couple more minutes here. Bible interpretation. Greek allegory has preceded Philo in this field, as the Stoic allegoricists, such as sought in Homer the basis of all philosophic teachings, so the Jewish allegoricists, and especially Philo, went to the Old Testament, followed the methods of Stoic allegory. They interpreted the Bible philosophically. So, here's what happened. Philo now takes and studies these things, and he writes his own manuscript.
Philo?
Philo does. Own manuscript, and he translates it. So in other words, he takes the original Septuagint and the original Hebrew, and now he translates it with this method of a Stoic allegorical interpretation. And that
What's the
manuscript.
Septuagint?
Hmm?
What's the Septuagint?
That's the original writings from that came down from Moses. Okay, we'll get into it, but basically Moses wrote the Pentateuch, and it was written in Aramaic. Then you have the laws and the prophets, and then all that was, by the time, remember, these people can't read, speak Hebrew anymore. The scholars could, and so like him, he could, but the common person couldn't. So it had been translated into the Septuagint. The original Septuagint was accurate. It was, so they take it from Aramaic and Hebrew and put it in this Greek Septuagint so people could understand it, because they couldn't, because Alexandrian, the Hellenistic age was on top of everybody, and they didn't even understand. Most of them couldn't even speak Hebrew anymore. At least in Philo's Alexandria, they couldn't. So now he takes that, and then he goes through and says, well, it says there were 40 days fast. Well, that doesn't mean 40 days, So he rewrote it and made his own manuscript. Okay, and it was done in classical Greek. Classical Greek. Very important, this manuscript. So he took and he twisted it to say what he wanted to say, because he did it with this Stoic allegory. Okay, we'll put it. Stoic allegory, based on Philo and Plato and Aristotle and all the philosophical stuff. Boom. And if we're going to look here, okay, we'll probably have to end there because time's out. But there we have that far. This manuscript comes into play huge. Because remember, we have two. We have on the other side. This is the dark side. I call it the dark side.
What's the dark side? The allegorical side?
Dark side starts with Philo. It comes down to Westcott and Hort, and their revised standard. And I think it was 18. I forget the year. I should know that. Hold on, I'll get to them. Where is my chart? Chart. Yeah, there it is.
1831
Nope. It could be. Let me see.
and 1891.
Yeah, 1881. That's the date. 1881. They draw on his manuscript. But now Westcott and Hort don't like it, so they rewrite their own.
Where did you say that, 1881?
Well, you won't have it there.
Oh,
It's in this other chart
okay,
like that.
okay,
I'm just jumping back and forth. I'm going to have to take your book and fix it
okay.
one of these times. Maybe I should do it now. So anyhow, and so it comes down to this. See, this whole side all comes down, and from there, ultimately, we end up in the NIV. There you go. That's the dark side coming down through Philo. He's the root of it. But something happens with Philo in Alexandria, Egypt. Because remember, he was born in 50 BC, but he died in 20 AD, which Christ came along, did he not? Well, as far as we know, Philo never went to Jerusalem or never saw Christ, but someone who had been there in Samaria did. We'll get into that. And that Samaritan who came to Alexandria brought something with him. 2 things. And then it's all going to connect. Boom. And those 2 things come right down the family line. Right down to the book. You won't find it there yet.
I'm looking.
Now you see it. Go ahead, turn the page. There he is. Simon Magus. Oh yeah, Simon Magus. And so we're going to stop here because God, and we're going to see what he teaches about God and all this. They were, well, let's see, what were they? They didn't believe, he didn't believe, and Ron didn't believe in the deity of Christ. It all follows down. So anyhow, we'll stop there.
What does the RS mean?
Revised Standard.
A revised standard, okay.
Yeah, Revised Standard. It's on your chart. Yeah, I'm just showing you where we're going with it. See, I showed the whole, we started, remember where we started from. And now if you go back and start looking at that chart, it's going to start making sense.
Yeah.
It's going to make a lot of sense.
I was looking at it. Right here.
Yeah, see? You know, I'll just go and touch your chart. So we start here with Adam, and we see this coming down, and then we see where the evil began. Came down to here where all evil in the earth came together, boom. And when we made a Luciferian doctrine here, and it comes on down. It comes on down to Philo. But how Philo got it was not the way you'd think. He got this Luciferian doctrine, and all her stuff came down through Simon Magus. To Simon Magus. And Simon Magus brought it to Philo, and a couple things he brought to Philo. And Philo then picks it up and incorporates it in all this stuff in his manuscript. And then it comes on down to the spiritualists here. Westcott and Hort, they were spiritualists, they were evil. And then ultimately all that filters down to the NIV. And that's the end of the evil line. And then we go back and show, now then we go to the next slide, we show you the true Bible line coming from Moses. A lot of people don't realize that when Jesus came along, he confirmed the Old Testament, the true Old Testament, because he preached from it. that made it pretty authentic. And he preached from the Septuagint and from the Pentateuch. And they were, you know, they had to, as children, they had to go through.
How do you spell Pentateuch?
Oh, gee, you're asking a hard one.
Septuagint. Okay. And how do you say it?
P-E-N-T. I'll spell it for you. P-E-N-T-A-T-E-U-C-H. Pentateuch means 5. There's 5 books.
Parachute, Pentateuch.
Yeah, Pentateuch. And what we show that line all the way down to the Bible you have laying in front of you, and how that is the Word of God. That one is not. None of those on that side are. They're all counterfeits. And it all starts, the counterfeit. But see, we had to go back to Semiramis to show how we get all the evil down to here. And we had to show how she came into being all the way down. So now you see why.
It's amazing how we got this, though, with all of that going on.
Oh, yeah. But you got both. Now we got...
Because that was even before Christ.
Yeah, no, well, this came about during Christ time. Because remember?
I thought it was 5,000 years before him. No?
No.
Okay.
Philo was born in 50 BC before Christ. He died 20 AD after death. 20 years after Christ's death, he died.
Okay.
And it was this...
Yeah, so it did happen 50 years before.
No, that's when he was born. He probably didn't write this till sometime around 10 between 10 and 20.
So Philo was after Christ when he wrote this.
Yeah,
Okay.
right. Well, Christ was, he was alive at the same time, but Christ died at 20. I mean, he died at 20. Christ was only here for 3 years.
Right.
I mean, he was here longer, but I mean, only 3 years in ministry. And it's all in there. So there you have it. And that's where it's all coming. So you're done with this course, there'll be no question in mind. Anybody else wants to argue, you'll have the facts to show them. These are facts. And most people have no clue about Semiramis or evil entered the earth and how it got here, what it does. And let me tell you, it's still going strong. Okay. Everybody said amen.
Amen.
We're done. We're done.
We're done.
Very good
Bye,
class.
Sheila.
Thank you, Sheila, for coming to class.
Okay.
Hopefully you got it.
Bye.
Goodbye, Miss Sheila. See you next time.